Welcome to The Hypnotist, brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. This features powerful hypnosis, so do not listen while driving or operating machinery. This recording is not suitable for those with epilepsy or severe mental health issues.
And as you take a deep breath in, just get a sense that you're breathing in a deep feeling of calm and relaxation. Breathing in that relaxation, and as you breathe out, just feel that you're slowly, gradually releasing any form of tension, stress, or anxiety. I want you to imagine that you are in a large, empty room. It looks like a modern room, but it's completely empty. There is only you and a chair in this particular room. I want you to imagine that this particular chair looks very calm, relaxing, inviting, perhaps the most relaxing chair that you've ever seen. I want you to imagine walking up to the chair, climbing onto the chair, and feeling a sense of deep relief and release as you climb into the chair and just feel deeply calm and relaxed. I want you to imagine now lying on the chair that as you breathe in that feeling of relaxation, your body can identify which parts of your body are feeling more levels of tension or stress. Imagine that the feeling of relaxation is locating those particular parts of any tension and stress. Imagine that it's almost melting away any tension, just like ice cubes on a hot sunny day. As you breathe out, just imagine that that tension is being released, taking you deeper and deeper relaxed. That's right. I want you to imagine that as you breathe in that feeling of relaxation, your eyelids are getting heavier, the muscles around your eyes are relaxing, taking you deeper and deeper relaxed. Breathing in that feeling of relaxation, and just allow your whole body to go deeper and deeper relax as your arms start to loosen, your neck, your shoulders relax. You find it easier to breathe deeper and deeper right there down in the diaphragm. Your legs feel loose. Perhaps your limbs are feeling heavier or lighter, but they feel very loose and relaxed. In fact, if someone was to pick up any of your arms or legs, they would all be almost loose and floppy, almost like the limbs of a puppet without any strings, feeling completely calm and relaxed. And I want you to imagine that you're about to fall asleep in this chair, and just imagine what that would be like to deeply and completely fall asleep in that chair. Allow that to happen now. Eyelids getting heavier, feeling a desire to yawn. Imagine drifting asleep in that chair now. And I want you to imagine that you're able to imagine that you're dreaming that you're in the same room. There you are in your own body, but dreaming that you're in the same room, seeing yourself there on that chair, fast asleep. Consider the part of you that is fast asleep to be the conscious part of your mind. Allow the playful, imaginative part to just enjoy being in this room, ready to go on an adventure. From this point onwards, I want you to consider yourself to be the protagonist in your own movie. Allow that thought to just open a door inside your unconscious mind as to what it would be like to have an adventure inside your own imagination. I want you to imagine as you see yourself there fast asleep on that chair, that somewhere else in this room is a colored ball. And it doesn't matter what color the ball is, just whatever color comes to mind is exactly the color that that ball should be. As you get closer to the ball, I want you to raise your hand over the ball, and something unusual will happen. The ball will go stationary from the floor up into your hand, almost like the ball is in reverse. And I want you to get a sense of how bizarre and strange this is, but equally that you were expecting it to happen. When you put your hand over the ball, it instantly raised up at the same speed as if it was going the other way round. I want you to put the ball back there on the floor, and again, try it again. Put your hand over the ball and notice the ball simply goes from the floor up to your hand. And I want you to notice that there is a different colored ball at the far side of the room, further away. And I want you to make a motion like you're about to throw the ball, but the ball on the other side of the room suddenly, in reverse, launches itself from the other side of the room into your hand. It occurs to you that you're not throwing the ball, you're catching it. And it's this idea that certain objects within this imaginary space can invert time. I want you to think of a specific event in your life. Now, perhaps this event was traumatic or at least undesirable, but a point in your life in which, from that point onwards, it was no longer as desirable as it was before. Perhaps something happened in your life which became a point of inception of a particular belief or philosophy, perhaps a tenet, if you will, that is no longer desirable for you. Perhaps it was an idea about who you are or what the world means to you, what you're capable of or not capable of, whether you are a victim or a hero in your own story. But just understand that sometimes beliefs, particularly about ourselves, are linked to moments in our life. And I want you to think about that traumatic or undesirable event and realize that perhaps an undesirable belief or evaluation was connected to that moment that is no longer serving you now. And you don't need to know what undesirable belief you adopted. Just know that your life was different after that moment, and perhaps not in a good way. And I want to sow a seed of an idea, a word, and the word is TENET. And I want you to understand that this word will open the right doors, but some of the wrong ones too. And inside your own mind, vocalize the word TENET now. And as you do so, notice that a door suddenly appears in this large empty room. The door does not have to be connected to a wall. It could be a door just floating there. And behind that door will be that moment in your life, that traumatic or undesirable moment, except it will be perhaps the minutes or hours leading up to that particular moment. And I want you to go through that door and visit that moment, but from the perspective of where you are now. Just imagine that this doorway is a portal back in time, and that you're able to see that with all the knowledge and experiences that you now have, and able to see how that moment back in time impacted the rest of your life after that moment. I want you to walk through that door now, and as you walk through the door, imagine that you are now back in time to before that moment happened, that traumatic or undesirable event, and you are not visible to anyone else. Just imagine that you are a ghost, a visitor from the future to the past. No one is able to see you. So even if the moment only involved you or perhaps one other person, no one can see you at all. You are there just to witness whatever happened, and particularly the moments leading up to that moment. I want you to notice where you were, what you were wearing, your facial expressions, the age you were back then. Consider that you are a spy from the future looking at all of the details that perhaps you missed at the time that led up to that moment. Everything around you. I want you to then experience what happened. I want you to witness any pain, physical pain, emotional pain, psychological pain. Notice everything that happened in that moment, not from the perspective of the version of you that experienced it, but the perspective of you from the future that is now witnessing it. And I want you to observe the point that you feel is the point of inception, where you were about to give some kind of meaning or evaluation to that moment. And I don't know what meaning or evaluation or a belief that you accepted at that point, but I do want to sow a seed of an idea. And as you think about what happened here, just imagine if it hasn't happened yet. Knowing what you now know, what would you have done differently? How could the same moment have been evaluated differently to empower you, to give you fuel, to make you stronger? And I want you, for the purpose of this dreamlike imagination of adventure, to consider this point in time a temporal junction, a point in time after which everything changed. Because in order to make a powerful change, you have to start looking at the world in a new way. I want you to imagine living perhaps 20 or 30 years after this point, carrying perhaps an idea of victimhood, shame, failure, whatever emotion or evaluation connected to that belief that it may have been, and then imagine 20 or 30 years of living that way in the future. Perhaps beliefs that you can't do things, that you're not able to succeed, that bad things will happen to you, whatever the belief or emotion was. Imagine living that way for 20 or 30 years. And then just imagine, with all of that knowledge, 20 or 30 years worth of knowledge, in the future, that you are able to go back to that moment and do things differently, or perhaps influence what happened in that moment. I want you to imagine that now you are back in that room, back through that door into that large, well-lit room, seeing yourself fast asleep in that chair, seeing those different colored balls perhaps just on the floor. But I want you to imagine that somewhere now in this room is a large metal machine, a vault if you like, with large metal doors. It looks like it's from the future. Imagine this, if you will, as a temporal style that enables you to go back to a specific moment. And I want you to imagine, as you go into this large vault-like machine, that you will go in the present, but you will return back in time. But this time, you will be able to go there in a way that influences the past, not as a witness, not as a spy, but someone that can actually do something differently. And as you go into this large, vault-like machine, imagine that you go in as one person, but come out as another person. And I want you to imagine that although time is going forward, you are going backwards, and as such, it appears that things are going in reverse for you when you leave that machine. Imagine that even the air that you breathe has to be different now. Imagine wearing some kind of a gas mask that enables you to breathe the right level of oxygen for you going back in time. You are there from the future, now back, and you are going towards that moment from exactly the opposite direction of the version of you that you witnessed before. Whereas that version of you is going towards that point in time, that moment, that temporal junction forwards. You are arriving there from the future to that point in exactly the opposite direction. But you are gifted with all of the knowledge about how everything that happened in that moment later influenced every other part of your life. You are also armed with the information that you've just witnessed from the version of you that was there as a spy, conducting reconnaissance to know exactly all of the points that led up to that particular moment. That's right. And I want you to consider this particular process almost like a temporal pincer, that you are approaching the same point in time from two different directions, just like the military strategy of a pincer movement. The world is going in reverse, but you are going forward. You are now approaching that specific moment from two different directions. The past, where the event is yet to happen, and the future, where you know exactly what will happen. You are not able to influence the actual event, as that has already happened. But you are able to influence the perception and the memory of what happened. And with the knowledge that you now have, you are able to influence that memory and that perception. The unconscious will allow the future version of you to intervene and alter the memory in whichever way will give the present and the past versions of you the best possible future going forward. And I want you to feel like you are now in the body of the version of you that was there in the past, witnessing what was about to unfold, but this time allowing the future version of you to intervene, to change things with all of that advanced knowledge, insight, how it would impact you in the future. Allow the future version of you to do whatever they need to do to make things different, to make you feel somehow different about the moment. Perhaps in a situation where you lost, you now were victorious. Perhaps instead of a failure, there was a victory. Perhaps instead of evaluating this as a situation that you were losing or unable to win, you now have the perception that you have advanced knowledge that enables you to be successful for all different things like this in the future. Just allow the future version of you to influence things and observe what happens. And whereas before there was an overall feeling of a particular emotion, perhaps an unpleasant emotion, now somehow you are witnessing the same event, but because of this new information and additional interventions, the emotion is somehow different. You are seeing the same things, but now taking place slightly differently. And those differences make all the differences, because now you're not able to perceive things as it actually happened. You're now only able to perceive things in the updated way. Just imagine that the future version of you has now altered what has happened at that temporal junction to mean that from this point onwards, whatever belief was there before is now no longer there. And if your unconscious accepts that by intervening in the moment, that a new empowering meaning has been accepted, then accept that new belief. And imagine what your future will now be like with this new belief, philosophy, or tenet. There was a meaning given and accepted after that moment happened. But now that the moment has happened in a different way, allow a new meaning to be linked to that particular moment. That the point of inception has now been replaced with a new point of inception of a new belief or meaning. Consider what that meaning will be. If before the meaning was that you can't, now perhaps the meaning may be that you can. If the emotion linked to what happened was shame, now Perhaps the emotion linked to what happened is a feeling of pride, empowerment, an ability to take action. But also consider that if your unconscious doesn't accept that by changing the memory of that moment, that a new belief is installed, then just imagine that there is a future version of you that went back even further, back in time, to before not only this event happened, but perhaps months or even years before, and made a single alteration that meant that a chain of events took place so that whatever you did experience in that moment simply didn't happen. And what would life have been like if that moment simply didn't happen? That future version of you influenced something so that the moment that actually happened could never have happened. And if that moment never happened, then the belief that you've been carrying since that moment simply would never have been there. And if the belief had no point of inception, then not only would you never have had that belief, but you'd no longer be believing that belief. And all of the consequences that you have been dealing with directly as a side effect of carrying that belief or approach. Allow your unconscious mind to think about what the most suitable and beneficial belief to replace that empty space would be. And it is an empty space. It would have to be, because if the moment never happened, then how can the belief be there? And the human mind is a lot like nature. Nature does not like a vacuum. It will occupy it with something. If you imagine a forest and a large tree that perhaps was there for hundreds of years suddenly gets old and falls down, canopy of the forest cannot allow that space. So very quickly, the other trees will get larger or something new will grow in its space. The same thing takes place in the human mind. There is now a vacuum where that old belief used to be. And I want you, by design, to decide what you'd rather was there instead. A belief about what you can do, what is possible for you. Perhaps about how many options or the different opportunities, the resources that you have, and what is possible for you in the present and in the future. Consider that the future version of you went back in time and did something in your past that the future version of you, which is now you, is going to be appreciative of. They have laid all of the framework, the foundations, for you to have a more enjoyable, satisfying, and fulfilling life. And perhaps you could consider that from this point onwards, you have everything to be grateful for. That there are opportunities out there that you have the ability to take, and a future that you can pursue that will meet all of your goals and dreams and desires. But whatever it is that you decide to replace that old belief, philosophy, or tenet with something new, just consider that there is always a feedback loop. That if in a few hours, days, or weeks from now, you don't like the new belief that has replaced the old belief, then you can simply listen to this again and update it with a belief that would serve you even more. Allow your unconscious mind to really think of the most suitable and beneficial belief to replace that empty space. Not only have your unconscious mind decided and feel that that's what you've been believing for weeks, months, and perhaps even years. Because beliefs feel somehow like you're wearing someone else's clothes to begin with. until you get comfortable with them and they feel like they've always just been there. And I want you now to imagine that you're back in that room, seeing yourself in that comfortable chair, fast asleep. And imagine what it would be like, not just to be back in your body in that chair, but back in your body, in your bed, waking up tomorrow morning with that new belief, that new evaluation, the new meaning or the changes that you've given to that point in your history. Notice how everything seems slightly different, that you feel different, perhaps lighter, with more energy, more vitality, feeling incredibly resourceful, and with those resources, eager to do something that your future self will thank you for. I want you, as you're in that room, to now climb back into the version of you in that chair, fast asleep. You are taking the updated memories and beliefs and now incorporating it into that physical conscious body there on that chair. And as you do so, as you breathe, you feel like the body that you're in is also breathing, all parts integrating, all memories updating to reflect the new meanings, evaluations, and associations. The future is now different. In a few moments' time, I'm going to count from 1 to 10 to awaken you. You will awaken with a feeling of positivity, optimism, a feeling that the future is very bright and very desirable, and that you have all of the resources, skills, beliefs, and approaches that will enable you to make the very best of your life in the present and the future. Starting to count to awaken you. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake.